I am really excited to hear you shun Martin Scorsese in this episode. Your man. Give us the intro.
Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Jake Ziegler, and I'm here with Brad Garoon. On Never Did It, we look back at the last 100 years of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. Today we're covering the year 1977, and we'll be talking about two of the most respected and loved auteurs of not only their generations, but all time. We're going to look at Martin Scorsese's New York, New York, and we're going to talk about David Lynch's debut film, Eraserhead. Brad, you said you're excited to hear me talk about Scorsese, so let's start with New York, New York. I recommended this for you. I think it was the only 77 movie I'd seen that you haven't. And I've seen quite a few movies from 77, but there's, like Saturday Night Fever, Annie Hall, Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I've never seen Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, you never seen Saturday? Why didn't I pick Saturday Night Fever, I wonder? That's a much better movie.
But I'm really glad you didn't, because I'm so excited to hear you crap on Scorsese.
New York, New York is, but I picked it because, again, it is a Scorsese movie, and I know you wanted to watch all of the Scorsese movies at some point, so that seemed, like you'd have at least some interest in checking that one off the list. So that's why I picked it. I only saw it for the first time a couple years ago when I visited you in New York, and I also saw Professor Richardson there, and we decided that we were going to run through the Scorsese movies and do this was like a proto Never Did It. I've credited Richardson with this idea many times, but we decided we were going to watch all the Scorsese movies. And New York, New York was one of the probably 3 or 4 that I hadn't seen at the time, and it's actually hard to find now. It's not streaming anywhere now. I happen to have it on DVD. I bought a Scorsese DVD box set a couple years ago, many years ago, probably like 20 years ago, and some of the DVDs I'd gotten rid of, but New York, New York I always kept because it wasn't streaming anywhere. So I still do have the DVD. I watched it again on DVD. It's a movie about Robert De Niro as a saxophone player and Liza Minnelli as his love interest, who turns out to be a very good singer, ends up becoming more famous than him, and it just kind of follows their relationship and their journey through the music industry. It's kind of a music, people say, oh, it's Scorsese's musical. I'm like, it's not really a musical. I don't know if I'd really consider it a musical. I mean, it's about music and there are some musical scenes in it, but it's not a musical in the same way that La La Land is a musical where the characters are singing the actions of the movie or anything. But it's really just kind of a loose plot. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes, so it's a bit lengthy. It's certainly not Scorsese's longest or anything, but it's a little bit lengthy for the material that they had. But that's really it. It's just kind of a love story between these two musicians who don't really seem to have much in common and don't really seem to like each other at all.
Yeah, it's lengthy but not girthy. How I put it. I liked it.
I'm shocked, honestly. Yeah, I'm just very surprised.
I thought it was pretty cool. The opening scene is like a 25-minute scene on VJ Day of De Niro meeting Minnelli after harassing tons of women in this VJ celebration, and him harassing Minnelli and trying to get her to go out with him goes on forever. And I've heard it said that this was like a big bone of contention for the studio. The original cut of this movie was 4.5 hours.
Oh my God.
As I'm watching that scene, I thought, I'll never make it through this whole movie. There's no way. And then when I realized that this is a movie about, I don't even know if this is what was intended, but this is a movie about a con man. I mean, he is a con man. He's constantly running out on his hotel bills, and he's getting other people to pay for stuff for him and trying to sneak his way into controlling these bands, these jazz bands that he plays with. I liked that that's what it was, that it was a guy who's a loser who cons his way through life and ultimately can't get what he wants even after he gets what he needs. And it's a little bit of a dirtbag version of A Star is Born.
Comparison. I was going to talk about Star is Born too. Yeah, definite comparison to that.
So that aspect of it I liked, and that permeated throughout the entire 2 hour and 45-minute movie. So I was into it. Where it lost me, it had me in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, that's a cool movie, 3.5 stars. That's not my least favorite Scorsese movie at all. In fact, I like it a lot more than Raging Bull, which I found punishing. And that's a movie that most people like a lot more than I do. Whereas this was a similar kind of narcissistic character, but he's more amusing and less dangerous. Where it lost me was in the beginning, like I said, because it just went on forever. And then at the end, because Scorsese thought he was making his musical, and he did what they did in Top Hat, Singing in the Rain, American in Paris, the last 30 minutes of the movie are devoted to this song and dance. But he didn't deliver on that in the build-up, so it didn't feel earned in the execution at the end. And I just didn't care about Minnelli becoming famous through song in that way. And that's pretty much how I feel about the movie.
I didn't get any sense. Number one, like you said, it's more about a con man than a musician. And there was no sense to me that De Niro ever really cared about the music. So I didn't get his connection with Minnelli other than that, he just went around harassing all the women he could find until, he could break one of them down. I didn't understand why she eventually even did that. There was never a point in time where I felt like he was charming enough to her for her to fall for it. The whole start of the relationship just felt like really forced, and just like I said, no chemistry between them. I think they're both great. Obviously, De Niro is one of the greatest actors of all time. Liza Minnelli, not as she hasn't done as much. Well, she's done quite a lot of acting, but I mean, certainly not the rate that De Niro ever made movies. But she's very good in this too. But I didn't see any reason for the characters to be together. Didn't really see any of the chemistry there. They spent a lot of time on the music, which, like I said, De Niro doesn't really seem to even care about that much. Like, if I make the comparison to Star is Born, number one, there's so much more chemistry between the leads. I'm thinking about the Bradley Cooper Lady Gaga version. That's the one I'm most familiar with. There's so much chemistry between the two of them. It's like, well, they have to be together. That's fate right there. But then also the Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga in that movie, like, those characters are just deeply passionate about their music, and that carries the movie for me and the relationship through the bad parts. Whereas in New York, neither of you seem to be very passionate about anything. So that was the disconnect for me. There was just nothing that the characters really seemed to care about that much, and that was a rough 2 hours and 45 minutes to sit through when none of the characters really care about anything. So what am I supposed to care about?
By zeroing in on the emotional abuse of it, the movie worked for me and was satisfying in the end because, like you said, there's no reason for Minnelli to fall for it. There's no reason for her to be with him, but she's just sort of beaten down by him. He erodes her defenses until she's with him. And then at the end of the movie, it really seems like he's going to worm his way back into her life, and she doesn't let him back into her life. And I found that incredibly satisfying.
Agree with that, yeah.
So that worked. It's definitely is a lesser movie for him. I thought it was cool that he did everything in studio, very artificial looking sets, but it feels like a guy who got to second base and didn't score. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He did a lot of cool stuff. It doesn't come together as a great movie, but I think as something that there are a lot of people who are going to want to watch all of Scorsese's movies. I think there's enough here. At least for me, there was enough here to entertain and make me think, oh, I'm glad he tried that. I'm glad he tried that. I'm glad he didn't try that again after this.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad he tried it too. I mean, I'm one of the biggest supporters in the world of people going out of their comfort zone and trying something new and different. I mean, I'm the only person alive who likes Chris Cornell's Scream album. And I just think it was neat that he tried to do something different, and nobody else seems to agree. Glad Scorsese tried it, and everything. It just didn't come together for me at all. And I've seen it twice now. I can't imagine I'd ever watch it again.
I won't watch it again. But I liked watching it that time. There's just too many other movies to watch.
It's a 2.5 star for me. It's the only Scorsese movie I have below 3 stars.
Wow. I don't know that I have any Scorsese movies below 3 stars, but this was 3.5 for me. I liked this more than Raging Bull. Mm-hmm. I liked it more than After Hours, which I'm on the low end of fandom.
I like After Hours a lot.
I like that he tried it. I can't think of any Scorsese movies aside from that I like less than New York. Okay, I recommended for you, and this is decent timing because he passed away kind of recently, David Lynch's debut film, Eraserhead. This is an experimental film, essentially about a guy who's afraid to be a parent. When you said in a different episode, what's it about? It's about a guy who doesn't want to be a dad. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of it. There's a very famous, scary animatronic in it, and it's depressing. So on the surface, a guy is living in an industrial wasteland. He has a girlfriend who's terrible, and her family is terrible, and he knocks her up, and they have to take care of the baby. And that's really what the whole movie is.
But the baby is not a baby.
The baby is a manifestation of his fears, really.
Yeah.
It's a monster, and it's a manifestation of his fears. Honestly, like an overgrown sperm. That's what it's meant to look like. I recommended it for you because it's crazy to have not seen Eraserhead. It's like a really easy watch. It's super short. It's a really important movie in modern film history. I thought you should see it. And I find it amusing. I don't love it, but I find it amusing. But it informs a lot of Lynch's style. He's really into industrial sound, the aesthetic. He did one more black and white movie after this, but also the most famous episode of Twin Peaks is all in black and white and has a lot in common with this movie. It's his first collaboration with Jack Nance, who he'd go on to make a ton of movies with until Nance's death. So I thought it was important you see it. And, I can't imagine someone hating this unless they're like squeamish. So what do you think of Eraserhead?
I liked it, but I didn't love it. I had a little bit of a hard time connecting with it at first, but it's an undeniably impressive debut movie. And for someone, to really hit it in his first feature, he'd done a few shorts before that. Have you ever watched the early shorts? Mm-hmm. Tell you that one with the siren, the six guys just puking over and over again. I was like, I had a really hard time with it.
I don't know if I would call that a short film. I feel like that's something that goes on the wall of a museum. It's like it's an art piece. It's not.
It is
certainly not a movie.
No, it's not. But anyway, for someone in his first like debut like feature film to really have all the aspects of his style that would continue on like through the rest of his career, like it was almost like fully developed with this movie with Eraserhead. So many of his like signature things and themes and just the way it looks and the way it feels and everything. There's so much of that he got right away, which I think is really really cool. Yeah, I just kind of had a hard time connecting with someone. I didn't realize how silent the movie was either. I didn't realize there was such a lack of dialogue, which again I think is kind of a cool thing. But it's the movie's not, it wasn't very accessible to me, but all the things that you said about it, I mean, yeah, it's super important, to modern film history. It's a great introduction, to Lynch and his style. It's an easy watch. Like I said, there's some squeamish parts in it, but I mean, it was still the late 70s. So it looks a little silly when he finally unwraps the monster baby and it just like disintegrates into like blood. Ugh, it's kind of gross, but I didn't think it was like, more gross than, other gross things that people have seen and handled. So absolutely glad I watched it. It was a big never did it on my list for a long time.
Is that the final Lynch movie you haven't seen, or Wild at Heart?
Oh no, I haven't seen Wild at Heart. I haven't seen Fire Walk with Me. I have not seen Elephant Man, which I ordered on DVD. I found a DVD of it for relatively cheap. The Blu-rays were like really expensive, and I couldn't tell if they were like, some of them were like region 2, and so I was like, I don't want to. So I found a DVD which I recognized the cover of from my family video days, and Wild at Heart I had to get on Blu-ray too. Wow. I think those are the only 3 now that I haven't seen.
You can watch Fire Walk with Me without watching Twin Peaks, but
yeah,
I don't know how much sense it's going to make.
Yeah, that's a feature, so I'll have to try it at some point.
I don't know how much sense it would make when you watch Twin Peaks. Frankly, it's a pretty baffling movie. It's also horribly depressing. Man, that one's a tough hang. Yeah, this is, I think, my third from the bottom of Lynch's 10 features. Number 1 for me is, man, it's so funny. I'm like thinking about, I know my ratings of all these movies off the top of my head, but I'm thinking about it, like in my heart, Wild at Heart is my favorite Lynch movie. And then I also love The Elephant Man. I love The Straight Story. I love Mulholland Drive. I really don't like Inland Empire.
Oh, Inland Empire that's one movie I almost walked out of. If I wasn't with people, I might have left the theater.
Yeah. Don't particularly love Lost Highway.
Mm-hmm.
Although the farther I get from it, the more I appreciate it. Oh, Dune. Dune's fine.
Dune and Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet, I think, is overrated.
Yeah. We talked about that at pretty great length, yeah.
Yeah. Don't watch Blue Velvet. Watch King Creole. Much cooler movie about a very similar...
Yeah. But although you really should watch Blue Velvet, because, again, people love that movie. I mean, it's so beloved. I don't get it, but, we're in the minority on that one.
Totally. It's a few of my other buddies watched it recently and were like, yeah, it wasn't for me either.
Really? Okay, good. Jeff Richardson was that way too, I remember. So it's like, okay, so we're not completely crazy.
We're not crazy at all. We're just in the minority.
Yeah, well, and Roger Ebert famously disliked it too, which he continued to get flack for forever after he gave it a negative review.
Ebert's relationship with Lynch is interesting because Lynch credits him with helping the promotion of Mulholland Drive, but Ebert crapped on a lot of Lynch stuff. Yeah,
it was almost 50-50 on his movies. I remember him not particularly liking Lost Highway, but I know he gave Straight Story a good review, and obviously on Mulholland Drive. I'm not sure how he felt.
Elephant Man good. I mean, Elephant Man is such an easy movie to love. Yeah, funny story. I don't know if we've told this on this podcast, but Elephant Man was produced by Mel Brooks, who did not put his name on the movie because he didn't want people to think it was a comedy, but he produced it because he loved Eraserhead.
And I can see Mel Brooks being into Eraserhead. That makes sense to me.
Totally. Should we do our top 10s for 77?
I have a top 8.
Okay, MySpace, let's do it.
Yeah. All right, so I have 3 movies from 77 that didn't make the list because I don't love them. New York is one of them, and the other one is Pete's Dragon. Have you seen Pete's Dragon, or do you remember much about that movie?
I remember loving it, but I don't have it on my list.
It's terrible. Because I watched it when the Disney remake came, when the remake came out with like Robert Redford and stuff, which is actually pretty good. One of the better Disney live action whatever remakes. That was pretty good. So I watched the original Pete's Dragon then. I'm like, it's like really long and like crazy boring and just kind of weird and not at all what I remembered. I really didn't like it at all.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I'm sorry. Yeah, just don't watch it. You'll be good.
It's not on my list, so yeah.
Yeah, and then another one I have that I know I've seen from that year, but I just don't have a star rating for because it's been a long time. The aforementioned Mel Brooks is High Anxiety, came out that year, but I just don't have a star rating for it. I remember liking it, but not loving it.
I don't like it.
Is it not good?
It's not good.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen it in a very long time. I have one movie on there that we talked about in a different year, but ended up, like, the release date, I ended up settling on 77. So we'll get to that. My number 8 is Eraserhead, because, like I said, it's a good movie. Historical importance is, about as high as it gets. My number 7 is, like I said, a movie we did discuss for another year, but ended up, I think its final release date in America was in 77, is F for Fake, the Orson Welles documentary. The release date on that one is kind of
all over the place.
All over the place. So, like, put that movie anywhere. This is where I ended up deciding to have it. So that's my number 7. Number 6 is probably the best Roger Moore James Bond movie, is The Spy Who Loved Me. I really like that one a lot. The song is great. I mean, some of the stunts are pretty great in it. My number 5, I have a soft spot for Winnie the Pooh, and I love the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh. It's the 3 short films kind of put together, and I just think that's such a treat. I love Winnie the Pooh to this day. My number 4 is Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta's breakout film role. He is just fantastic in this, and is about a guy living in Brooklyn who just wants to be a dancer, and his dad doesn't understand. His dad hits his hair. He hits it. John Travolta, he works hard on his hair, and then he hits it. I know. I wish you had, because there's this funny scene where his dad smacks him in the back of the head, and he complains to his mom. He goes, "He hit me. He hit my hair. I work hard on my hair, and he hits it." But it's also kind of depressing in a lot of ways too. Like, it's a bit of a downer in a lot of ways, but it's great. I actually think it's a great movie.
Isn't this Gene Siskel's favorite movie?
It was Gene Siskel's favorite movie. I think he bought the leisure suit that John Travolta wears in the final dance sequence or something at an auction or something. Yeah, it was very famously Siskel's favorite movie. Good taste. It's a good one. And the Bee Gees soundtrack, I mean, it's the height of disco. And then my numbers 3 through 1 are kind of hard to rank, because I think they're all all-time classics in various ways. Number 3, I have Annie Hall, the Woody Allen film, with Diane Keaton, of course. Everybody knows about that. Number 2, I have Star Wars, the original one. And then number 1, I have Close Encounters of the First Kind, which I actually saw for the first time just 2 or 3 years ago, and I think is brilliant.
Same. I also saw it for the first time just a few years ago. I did not have a hard time ranking those 3 movies. They are all in my list. My honorable mention is The Spy Who Loved Me. I think it is good, not great. I was really disappointed that it wasn't weirder after The Man with the Golden Gun. I watched them back to back, and The Man with the Golden Gun just embraces all the stupidity of Bond, and The Spy Who Loved Me doesn't do that.
Yeah.
My number 10 is John Cassavetes' Opening Night. You want to talk about punishing movies? This is 2.5 hours of people who fucking hate each other being mean to each other. And while someone has a breakdown, and then at the end, the breakdown is to the benefit, and her alcoholism is to the benefit of a play. I have a real hard time with this one, but it's a hell of a production. As with all John Cassavetes movies, Gina Rowland stars, Cassavetes himself is in it, and Ben Gazzara has a really important role, and I love Ben Gazzara.
Yeah.
My number 9 is Eraserhead. We've said a lot about that. My number 8 is the Rankin and Bass version of The Hobbit, which was maybe my favorite movie as a child. Watched it again 3 years ago, and I still think the songs are very good. My number 7 is Smokey and the Bandit, directed by Hal Needham, starring Burt Reynolds and Sally Field. This movie's charming as hell. Jerry Reed is really funny as the sidekick to Reynolds' Bandit, and then Jackie Gleason as the villain. This movie's great. Guys got to get some beer from one state to another. It's not legal. It's great.
I actually never seen that one. It's surprising.
It's really fun. My number 6 is Close Encounters. I also just watched this a couple years ago. It didn't resonate with me as much as I thought it would. It's really just a movie about Richard Dreyfuss going crazy and putting dirt in his house.
Yeah.
But, classic for a reason. Pretty strange. My number 5 is New York, New York. I liked it. What can I say?
What? Close Encounters?
Yeah, I did. This is not I did this recently. I did it on purpose.
That hurts my heart.
My number 4 is The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I also really like Winnie the Pooh, and I think this works better than the other Winnie the Pooh movie, probably.
Probably, yeah.
I think it's weird that Winnie the Pooh has never gotten a real feature film. The first Winnie the Pooh feature is under an hour, and this one is, like you said, it's an anthology. Hello Strange. My number 3 is Star Wars. Not as big a Star Wars guy as many, but I think this is a great movie. My number 2 is Hot Tomorrows. This was Martin Brest's debut film, starring Ken Lerner, of all people, who is not a big star. And it's just about him being a very neurotic Jewish dude and walking around and doing very neurotic Jewish things. I think this movie's excellent. It got me into Martin Brest. It was the reason I watched Midnight Run and finally watched Beverly Hills Cop, and will one day watch Geely.
I'm going to say something about Geely here, and I think I've said this before. It's a bad movie. However, I don't think it's a special kind of, this is one of the worst films ever made, oh my god, what a disaster. I think it's just a regular bad movie.
I think part of it is they gave him a lot of money and really big stars to make it.
And I think, this was kind of the height of the tabloidism of the Bennifer thing. And I think that totally worked against it. And I get that totally. But in a vacuum, it's just a bad movie. It's not like a super disaster.
It's very surprising to me that there wasn't any kind of renaissance of it when they got back together in real life. And now they're broken up again. But.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And my number one is Annie Hall, which is not my favorite Woody Allen movie, but it is my favorite movie from 1977. It's pretty high up there. I just recently watched Stardust Memories, and that's my new favorite Woody Allen movie.
Ooh,
incredible.
I've seen that one.
It's basically his 8.5. Wow. It's incredible. He made two versions of 8.5. He made Stardust Memories and he made Deconstructing Harry, and they're both like excellent homages to Fellini.
I really like Deconstructing Harry, yeah.
It's great. Deconstructing Harry is the New York version of 8.5, just like LA Story is the LA version of 8.5, Steve Martin. Annie Hall, it's none of those things, but it's Diane Keaton is just undeniable in it. Woody Allen is pretty tolerable in it. Actually, I find him incredibly tolerable, period. I had to stop because I was falling asleep, but it was late. We started watching A Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy last night, and I'm like, he's just so funny.
Yeah, it just depends on the movie then too, because I watched recently Anything Else with Jason Biggs and Christina Ricci, and he has a part in that too, and he's just every time I see him, like he's just terrible in it. So I guess it really depends on the material.
Well, it does. I haven't seen anything else, but also his newer movies suck. Like I watched Rifkin's Festival, which he's not in, but Wallace Shawn plays the Woody Allen character, which you would think would be delightful. It's one of the worst movies.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the most recent film of his I saw.
Well, probably anything else.
No, that was 2003. I've definitely seen movies.
Oh, I thought that was more recent.
No, I've definitely seen more recent than that. I mean, Midnight in Paris was like 2011. Yeah.
Right. Blue Jasmine.
I saw a few others after that. Like there was one with Colin Firth and Emma Stone that I saw.
Did you see Blue Jasmine?
Oh, yeah. Blue Jasmine I thought was really good. That might be his last... I'd have to look at like the whole list or whatever, but I mean, Blue Jasmine I thought was like pretty great.
Maybe one day we'll do the Woody Allen rankings that no one will listen to.
Yeah.
There's a great line about Woody Allen in the studio. I'm really excited for you to watch that show.
Yeah, we'll probably start that soon.
Cool. All right, that's it for 1977. We'll be back soon with another year. We haven't looked it up yet, so surprise, surprise. I'm also trying not to get stuck if we reshuffle these a lot.
Yeah, if we're getting down to the end. We only have a few left.
I think there's only like 11 left. We've already, I now know because of Instagram, done over 100 episodes. So congratulations to us. We've done a lot of this.
Yeah, we have.